FIFA Club World Cup. Let's talk some Gold Cup, shall we? U.S. open up with an impressive 5-0 win over Trinidad and Tobago. Malik Tillman with a couple goals. Ashmang, Brendan Aronson, and Haji Wright round out the scoring for a U.S. team that finally snapped that 4-game losing streak. What does it mean? As we take a look at the 11 here, that's the 11 put forward by the manager, Mauricio Pochettino. Speaking of Pochettino, here's what he had to say after the game. Let's listen in.
Really important now to start the competition with a good feeling. I think important for the player, for the guys. I think nothing is done, but yes, to feel the victory. I'm being more positive in the next few days. I think it's important to grow that confidence in between us. Bueno, el partido de hoy también, un partido difícil, sobre todo por las cosas negativas que habían ocurrido en las últimas semanas. También algunos resultados que no se habían dado bien siempre generan un poquito de ruido, ¿no? Importante para los jugadores, importante tener esa confianza que mostraron en la primera parte.
All right, so Mario is still with us, but thrilled to be joined now in studio by former U.S. international Herculez Gomez. What crisis? What 4-game losing streak? Everything's perfect now, right? 5-0?
5-0. Let's go home. Mm-hmm. Crisis averted.
Yeah.
Nothing here.
What did you talk about on Football Americas last night then?
For a lot. Yeah, honestly, and not that much about the game, because what are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
With all due respect to Trinidad and Tobago, it went how Trinidad and Tobago usually goes in case, unless there's an accident, and Shaq was here and he told you the same thing. What can you really get out of that? What kind of positives?
Some individual performances? You didn't see anything you liked?
I did a few, but even then, those individual performances are of a bad Trinidad and Tobago team, a team that played badly on their day. Talks about the negativity, the drama leading up to the game. That's on Mauricio Pochettino. He's the one creating this drama, creating this pressure. It would have been so easy for the Federation, and I don't know for the life of me why the Federation, Mauricio Pochettino, and Christian Pulisic didn't come together before this all happened to make sure this doesn't happen. Keep it in-house. So this negative drama, this pressure, these players wouldn't have now, because 4 games, it was the worst streak in the last 18 years. They've played bad against Trinidad before. It could have been 5. I know they scored 5 goals, but this game, they somehow managed to not win. Nobody bats an eye. Nobody bats an eye. And that would have been on Mauricio Pochettino, the Federation, and yes, Christian Pulisic, this bad negative moment. So, yeah, they won the game, a game they're supposed to win, regardless of the team that was out there. But he talks about how difficult it was. That's because of Mauricio Pochettino.
Stevie, who'd you like in this?
God, I think you're a bit harsh, aren't you? Don't think you're a bit harsh?
On who?
On the USA.
You think... No, hold on. You think there's a world where they go into this game and they're not supposed to win?
No. Okay. No, but I think considering the pelters, the whole noise that you're talking about has absolutely... Every single one of them was carrying weights on the shoulders before this game started.
But that's what I'm talking about, Stevie.
Because they knew... No, I agree, it's down to him, the pressure. But at the same time, that team had to respond to the pressure that was on them. And they did. And they did it from the get-go. You know, I think we've got to give them some positive vibes for the way they went about it. You know, again, you can say that Tobago gave the ball away, but you know what? They jumped on them. They pounced on them. They put them under pressure to make those mistakes, and then they took their goals. And the fact that Tillman got a couple of goals, I think is huge. This is a guy who, it seems, just has never got going with a USA jersey on. And the fact that it's against Trinidad and Tobago, for me, doesn't really matter. You've got to start growing and climbing somewhere. And for me, this could be the start of Tillman growing. Because he scored 2 goals that we think he should be doing and taking on a regular basis. And in terms of who did I like, I thought McGlynn.
Yeah, he stood out to me too.
You know, he scored a fantastic goal against Turkey. So he kind of showed us what he's capable of. But he's still young, he's still learning. And then he played a pass in the first half from one side of the field to the other.
Deserved a better finish for Diego Luna.
I'll tell you what, I was sat like that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if we're talking about individual players, I think Diego Luna continues to still impress. Okay. He's making it very difficult for when the A team gets here to be excluded from that group because of his attitude, because of the way he makes things happen. But I took more away from the first 20, 25 minutes versus Turkey than I did this last game versus Trinidad and Tobago. That difficult game against Turkey told me more about what I needed to see from these players than this Gold Cup game against Trinidad and Tobago.
What are you saying in terms of...
I disagree with you again.
Yeah. Sorry, just to be clear, you're saying in terms of like who could actually make a World Cup team? Because I think that's what we're talking about with this group of players, right? It's who could be players maybe 12 through 26.
Exactly.
26
exactly. I think you get very little, and I'm with Stevie. You got to score those goals, and maybe it's a party in the waters for a player like Tillman.
I mean, Tillman has not scored until yesterday.
And you know how big I've been on Tillman, PSV, and what he's done, especially at Rangers.
The goals and assists come for him regularly at club level, not at international.
But I actually enjoyed the way he played against Turkey. It showed me something. Right. Now, you play these type of games, you're going to find the ball in the back of the net. Ajiman scored a goal. He had no idea how he scored. he didn't even know what it was about, but he scored a goal. Yeah. I take more stock into those type of games like Turkey. And honestly, there are a few players that did, like Jack McGlynn, scored a golazo against Turkey. Yep. Those are the games I want to see these players in.
Mario, you probably see a lot of Malik Tillman over there with PSV. What do you think of the player, and what do you think about him in this game?
I think he did really well. I watched the game, of course, you understand. And I feel like at PSV, he does a lot of, people always talk about him. He's very creative, you understand, the way he buzzes around in the middle of the park. He is, how will I say, plays on a lot of intuition. So that is his skill. And I felt like yesterday when I watched the game was coming out, of course, what you said that Jones was helping. Because the way Dwight York wants to play, he likes to play from the back, the way he wants to play. But they were too risky. Because sometimes you also have to have the individuals that can handle that. Jones gave the ball a couple of times away, and they penetrated from that. But the way McGlynn played, that was for me the star of the show. The way that not only out of the boot, but also inside of the boot. That left foot of him, oh my God. He made a great introduction to my eyes because I enjoyed it. And I felt like we also, the first half, we saw a lot more of him than compared to the second half. But that was definitely it. And then, if Tillman, when he comes on and he does things like that, he scores goals, will rise his confidence and he will contribute even more to the American team.
Let me ask you a question here, because you see the US and that a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out here what does this Gold Cup mean? Is it really all about winning the Gold Cup, or is it about Pochettino being able to pick out some players, the likes of Luna, McGlynn, in terms of, can I get 3, 4, 5, 6 players from this Gold Cup group to be able to push 4 or 5 of the players right now who are 100% starters?
Yeah.
And then I actually start building a little bit of a squad, as opposed to right now where it feels to me like the US have got an 11, if you can do that, and that's it.
Yeah, you know what the crazy thing here is? I think it's an impossible task for Mauricio Pochettino, because you're asking to identify players without putting them with the actual players who are going to be there, without the core of the team.
And against competition, for the most part, you're going to always be like, well, it's Trinidad and Tobago, I can't evaluate
Exactly.
it. Right.
It's very difficult to evaluate that. So you're sitting here and saying, which player could potentially come off the bench and help me? Which player could potentially be somebody who cracks into that starting lineup? Realistically, there was one starter, maybe 2 if you include Ream, Richards and Ream. You don't have the spine of the team. You don't have the fullbacks. You don't have the 9 there. You don't have your captain. You don't have the defensive midfielder. So it's very difficult and unfair to evaluate a player like Diego Luna, to evaluate a player like McGlynn, to evaluate these players that could potentially carve out a role for themselves, because there's always somebody, every World Cup cycle, that comes out of nowhere. It's very difficult if you don't give them a chance to participate with the actual team, because the moment it doesn't go well with the actual team, you're going to say, well, he wasn't ready. He wasn't good enough. And I think it's an impossible task for somebody like Mauricio Pochettino. But that's on the federation, and that's on U.S. soccer for how they've treated the Gold Cup. The last 6 editions, they've sent a B team or worse in 5 of those editions. They've treated the Gold Cup like a secondary tournament, and now they're upset because the players are treating it like a secondary tournament.
Yeah. Especially over the last few years, right? Once CONCACAF Nations League became a thing, it seemed like that became the priority. Gold Cup kind of dropped into the background. Let's take a look at the group, because next up for the United States, it'll be Saudi Arabia. A bit of a stiffer test, to be honest, than what they saw from Trinidad and Tobago, and probably what they'll get in the group phase finale against Haiti. But there you see, through 1 game played, the United States right now first place in Group D in the Gold Cup. Reminder, it'll be Herc, Stevie, and Mario with us for today's edition of Extra Time. I wonder who will be showing off their hardware. No Frank LaBeouf joins us. And of course, you can always check that out over on the ESPN FC YouTube channel.